Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to my Deno crash course. So I'm sure that your YouTube feed is flooded with Deno videos right now. It's definitely the next new thing. However, be cautious about people saying that Node.js is dead and it's completely replacing it right now. And I'll get to that in a second. But basically in this crash course, we're going to do a few things. We're going to talk about what Deno is and its features and benefits. We'll have a few slides, and then we'll jump in and write some code. We'll start to look at some concepts like how to run files, use parts of the standard library and namespace helpers, use third-party packages. We'll create a simple server, and then we'll move on to create a complete REST API using Deno and Oak, which is a minimalistic middleware framework, okay, similar to Express or Koa. So let's talk about what Deno actually is. It's a runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript based on the V8 JavaScript engine and the Rust programming language. It was created by Ryan Dahl, who is also the creator of Node.js, which is also a JavaScript runtime that uses the V8 engine. So if you're looking into Deno at this time, I'm guessing you already know what Node.js is, and it's most likely that a lot of you are already using it. So you might ask, why did Ryan Dahl create another JavaScript runtime? Well, he announced it about 2 years ago and said that there were some things with Node that he wasn't happy with. And I think as developers, we can all look back on some of our older code and see things that we could have done better and we could improve. So I think that's what happened with Ryan and Node, although he couldn't just change Node.js at its core. He had to create a new project, and that's where Deno came into play. Now, there's some things that I just want to address really quick, and I might rant a little here. Keep in mind, this is my opinion. Nobody can really tell what the future holds, but this is a very strong opinion backed up by facts. So you might see crap like this, Node.js is dead, etc. Unfortunately, that's just how the internet is. Bloggers and content creators, they want to maximize views, and they tend to make stupid claims like this. Not all, but a group of them out there. Deno is a brand new technology that was just released. 1.0 was just released the other day, and it is a good idea to start playing around with it, which is why I'm making this crash course. I think that in the future it's going to be big, and I think that it's going to be a great alternative to Node.js. However, Node.js is not dead, it's not dying, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. It has way too large of an ecosystem, and it's way too established. So if right now you're in the process of learning Node.js, keep learning it. Do not stop just because Deno was released. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So let's look at some of the really cool features of Deno. So one, we can use TypeScript, and the TypeScript compiler is baked right in. So all you have to do is create a file with a .ts extension, and you can then use TypeScript in your code. Deno is also secure by default. It actually runs in a sandbox, and in order to do things like read files, write to files, allow network access, or access your environment variables, you actually need to explicitly add these flags when running your application. Okay, so if you try to do one of these things without adding a flag, you're going to get a permissions error. And I'll give you some examples of that in a little bit. So Deno also offers decentralized packages. One huge complaint, probably the biggest complaint of Node.js, was the way that dependencies were handled with NPM packages. If you wanted to use, let's say, Express or some other package, you would install it with NPM, it would go in your Node modules folder, and it wouldn't be just Express as a dependency, but it would have all the dependencies of Express and then the dependencies of those dependencies. So you end up with, hundreds to thousands of folders in your Node modules folder. And Deno has a different approach by using decentralized package management. So there's no package.json or Node modules folder. If you want to use a third-party package, you can actually import it right from the URL at deno.land/x/ and then whatever package you want to use. So here is an example of using the Oak framework, which we're actually going to use in a little bit. So we're importing application from, and then the denoland URL/oak, and then the mod ts file. And what happens is as soon as you import this, it's cached to your hard drive on load. So it's a little different. It might take a little getting used to, but at least you don't have this Node modules folder with hundreds or thousands of folders inside of it. So Deno also has a set of standard library modules that are audited by the core team and guaranteed to work with Deno. So some stuff you'll find is like file system, date time stuff, HTTP, logs, a lot of the stuff that you would find with the core Node.js modules. And you would bring them in like this. So this is an example of bringing in serve from the HTTP standard library module. And we're actually going to do this as well. We'll create a simple server using this. All right. Next, let's see. So we went through some of these features. Also, modern JavaScript. So Node was created back in, I believe, 2009, and there's been a lot of updates and improvements to the language since then. So Deno takes advantage of more modern JavaScript. Also, we can use ES modules, or we actually have to use ES modules, which is the import syntax, over the common JS require syntax that Node.js uses. This is another really cool feature, the top level or first class await. Normally with async await, you have to wrap your awaits inside of asynchronous function. You have to label it async. But with Deno, we actually can use await in the global scope without having to wrap it in an async function, which is really cool. There's also testing, built-in testing with Deno. There's a browser-compatible API, so you can use features like fetch. There's a main window object, stuff like that. You can also execute WASM binaries, so WebAssembly binaries. You can execute those directly as well. So these are just some of the really cool features that Deno includes. So as far as installation goes, there's a few ways to install it. You can use curl. If you're on Windows, you can use PowerShell or some of the other package managers like Scoop or Chocolatey. I'm on a Mac, so I used Homebrew, so I just simply ran brew install Deno, and it's installed, and I'm able to access the Deno command. So that's what I would recommend if you're on Mac. You can also use Cargo as well if you're on Mac, Windows, or Linux. Okay, so I don't want to do too many slides. I know that some people aren't huge fans of them, but I did want to just go over what Deno is and some of its features, and now we'll go in and give you some examples of that. Okay, so first of all, this is the Deno website, deno.land, and you can find, the ways to install and get started, and all the documentation is here. So you definitely want to use this as a supplement to this crash course and any content that you watch with Deno. Now, what I'm going to do is just open up, not VS Code just yet. I'm going to open up my terminal, and I'm going to run Deno. Now, I already have it installed. I installed it with Homebrew, but there's multiple ways to install it, which I just showed you on the home page. But we'll just run Deno, and what happens is it actually runs Deno REPL. So it opens up the REPL, which stands for read eval print loop, and we can type in JavaScript here. We can do, 1 + 1 will return 2. We can create a variable, and we can take that variable and add on 200 to it. It returns 300. So we can just type JavaScript in here, very similar to the Node REPL. But we're going to get out of this with Command C, and then I'm going to type in here deno -- help, which will show us any options and subcommands. So, help, log level, you can display the version. Down here we have some subcommands. So REPL is what we just actually saw. Deno run is how we can run scripts, whether it's a local file or a URL, which I'm going to show you in a second. You can also install scripts as an executable. I'll show you that as well. We can upgrade Deno. We can run tests. We can check the documentation for a module. We can bundle modules and dependencies into a single file. We can cache dependencies. So a bunch of options here. Some environment variables like the base directory, which by default is going to be your home directory, and then .deno. So that's the help command or help option. Now I want to show you something real quick. If we go to the standard library, this is where you can find all the standard library modules, so HTTP, log, FS. I actually want to go to examples, and there's some example scripts here, one of which is welcome.ts, which you can see the code for it is just a console log. Now I can actually take this URL and copy it and go into, I keep opening that, into my terminal and simply say deno run and put in that URL, and it will actually run the script. So we can see welcome to Deno. And what's nice is that we can run the URL here, and it will execute the file, and we can go to that same URL in the browser, and it shows us this cool web page. So it knows if we're actually running the script with Deno or we're just going to it in a web page. And we can actually run curl as well. So if I say curl and then that script right there, it'll show me the actual code. It won't execute it, it'll just show me the code. It won't show me all the HTML. So it knows where it's being called from. So let's try that with something else. So if we go to colors.ts, you can see the code here, but I'm going to grab the URL and say deno run and paste that in, and we just get hello world with some background colors and text colors. Okay, now we can also install scripts. So I want to show you, if we go back to the standard library and we go to HTTP, let's see, so we're going to be using this server TS in a little bit, but I want to show you the file server, not so much the code. The code doesn't really matter to us, but we can take this URL here and let's go back to our terminal and let's run deno run and let's paste in that URL. Now for this we're actually going to get a permissions denied error because remember, Deno runs in a sandbox and we need to add these flags if we want certain permissions. So this actually requires read permission, file read permission, and network permissions. So we have to run it with some flags. So after deno run, let's say dash dash allow dash read and also dash dash allow dash net. So that will allow network access and read access. So now I'll go ahead and run that, and you can see that now I have a server listening on localhost 4507. So if I can even go into a browser and say, oops, that's not right, localhost port 4507, and it'll show me the files that I have in that folder, which is just a simple test.txt file. Now we can also install this. We just ran it, but we can install it with deno install. So I'm going to go back to my terminal, Control C to get out of that. I'm going to run almost the same command, except I'm going to do install instead of run, along with the flags, the security flags. So what's going to happen is it's going to download it. It's going to put it in my base directory. What's this? Oh, I already have it. You know what? Let me just let me delete it real quick. All right, so I'm just going to run that again. And what happens is it stored it in my base directory, which is right here, and then inside a folder called bin, and then file server, which if I bring this over, you can see this is my home directory. I have a folder called .deno, a hidden folder, folder called bin, and then this file server. So now I should be able to just run file underscore server, and it will do the same thing. It'll start that local server up. If I go here and reload, get the same thing. Okay, so you can install scripts like that with deno install, which is really cool. And you might have to add it to your path. You'll probably see a message here with a command to add it to your path. All right, so that's deno run and deno install, although we haven't created any local files yet. So let's jump into VS Code now, and let's create a file called hello.ts. And remember, this can be TS or JS. What I do is just use TS all the time, and even if I'm not using TypeScript, because you can always add it later. But it's up to you. So let's just do a variable here called greeting. And we'll set that to hello world, and then we'll do a console log of greeting, and then I can run this down here with deno run and then hello ts, and we're going to see this compile, because if there's any TypeScript, it's going to compile it and then spit out hello world. Now if I want to add TypeScript, I can do that. It's a string, I can run that, same thing. Now if I set this to be a string, but I actually set it to a number, you can see I'm already getting this here. But if I try and run this, I'm going to get an error right down here in the console, okay, because the TypeScript is compiled right through Deno, which is pretty cool. All right, so I'm just going to put that back. Now, excuse me, I want to show you how we can use something from the standard library. So I'm going to create another file here called datetime.ts. And remember, we want to import import from, and then what I'll do is go back to standard library here, and under date time you'll see this mod ts. So this is the date time module, and I can actually just grab the URL from here, and then oops, we want that in quotes, and I'm going to import two things. One is called day of year, and then I want current day of year. Now you're probably going to get a squiggly line under the URL. First thing you want to do is install the Deno extension for VS Code, which you can see I already have installed. So it's this one here by just JVac. So you want to install that, and you'll still get a squiggly line if it hasn't been cached. So if I've already used this, so it's already cached in my system, so I'm not seeing that line. But I'm going to go ahead and use the day of year, console log that, and then this takes in a date. So we'll say new date. Let's say 2020-0202. So it'll just give us whatever the day is of that. And then let's do another console log with the current day of year, which will just give me whatever today is, the day of today's date. So I'll go down here and I'll run deno run date time ts. I get 32 for this, and I get 140 for this. Okay, so that's just an example of how you can use a standard library module. Now we also have the Deno namespace, where we have different methods and things we can use. So I'm going to close both of those up and create a new file here. Let's call this create file.ts. And I just want this script to create a file called greet.txt. So first thing I'll do is create an encoder, so we can use UTF-8 encoding. So we can say new, we want to do text encoder, and then let's create a variable. We'll call this greet text, and we'll set this to use encoder.encode, and in here we'll just put in hello world, and we can put in a new line character, and then I'll say my name is Brad. Okay, so that's my text. Now I want to use the write file method on the Deno namespace. So deno.write file. Now this actually returns a promise, so I'm going to use await here. And notice I don't even have this wrapped in a function because we have that top level await. Okay, so I don't have to even have it in an asynchronous function. Now, if you don't have the Deno VS Code extension, it's going to complain about this because it's going to expect it to be in an async function. So here, let's pass in a file name. We'll call it greet.txt, and then the content is going to be the greet text, like that. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and we'll run deno run, and then create file. And notice I'm getting an error here because I need to add the allow write flag because we're writing to a file, which might be a pain in the ass at first until you get used to it, but I mean, it makes it more secure overall, so it is worth it. And there we go. So now I have a greet.txt file, hello world, with a new line, and then my name is Brad. All right, let's say we wanted to read that file. So we'll create another. And these are just, I mean, this is just to test things out. I'm not going to have this code anywhere or anything. It's so little amount of code. So let's say let file, and we'll use deno.open. Now again, this is going to be a promise, so I'm just going to put a top level await on it. And in here, let's read greet.txt. And what we want to do is output this to standard output. So we can use copy. We'll say await deno.copy and pass in that file, and then we want it to copy to deno.standardout. So it's going to be std out, and then we just want to take the file and close it. So what it should do is look at greet.txt, and then it should output it down here. So let's say deno run, and now we're going to need -- allow -read, and then read file. No such file. Whoops, I put T-E-X-T. That's not right. Let's try that again. And there we go. Hello world. My name is Brad. Now, the last thing I want to do before we start our REST API is just create a very simple server. So I'm going to call this simple server.ts. And I'm sure that you've seen this example over and over and over in other videos. So what I'm going to do is just go to the docs here, go to the standard library HTTP, and right here. So I'm sure you've seen this block of code in articles and videos and all that. So I'm not going to type it out. I'm just going to grab it and paste it in. So we're using serve from the server.ts file here, and then we're creating, we want to run it on a port, so we pass into serve an object with whatever port we want. We can console log, server running or whatever. And then here we actually use this for await syntax to get our request object, and then we can add a response. So here we're just awaiting, calling this request of S, which is our server, and then request.respond, and then we can add a body value, which right here is just hello world. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and now we should be able to do deno run simple server. It's going to give me an error because we need to add the allow net flag, so let's run it with that. So deno run -- allow -net. And now it should be running on localhost 8000. So if I open this up, we see hello world. So just a very basic server. Whenever you create something of any substance, you're probably going to use something like Oak. With Node.js, you would use Express. Not too many people just use the HTTP module and that's it. You can't do much in it, or it's just very low level. So what we're going to do now is just get out of this, and now I'm going to show you how we can build an actual API. I just wanted to show you some of the basics before we got into that. So now we're going to go ahead and start with a brand new folder here. I just called a Deno REST API. I'm going to open that up with VS Code, and we're going to start to build our API. And I'm also using Postman to make our request, so you can get it from getpostman.com, I believe. So in my root here, I'm going to create a server.ts file. This is going to be our entry point, and you're going to see a lot of similarities with Node as far as how we set up our router and initialize our app and so on. So first thing I'm going to do is import from Oak application, which is used to initialize our app, and then router. So we want to say from, and it's going to be https deno.land/x/oak/mod.ts. And you'll probably have a red squiggly line that just means that it hasn't been cached on your system yet. But once you run the application, that should be fixed. So now we can go ahead and initialize our app with application. New application. And then we can call app.listen, and we can pass in here a port, I'll say 5000. However, this needs to have an await in front of it, and remember we have that top level await, so we don't have to actually wrap this in an async function or anything. And then I'm actually going to put the port in a variable up here. So let's set 5000, and then down here we can just get rid of this since the key is the same as the variable. And then we'll put a console log here as well, and just put in some backticks and say server running on port, and just put that variable in there. Alright, so if I save this and I try to run it, let's open up, I'm just going to use my integrated terminal and run deno run. Now, since we need network access, we need to have allow-net, and then we can run our server.ts. And it's going to give us an error about middleware. So it says there is no middleware to process requests. Now, with Node and Express, this would still work. It would still at least run, but we don't have any routes or anything, so it's not, it gives us this error. So let's go ahead and initialize our router. So router equals new router. And then for the middleware, we want to do app.use, which should look familiar if you're familiar with Node, and then router.routes. So we need that, and then also allowed methods. And we're going to allow any methods. You can restrict them if you want. If you don't want delete or put or whatever, you can do that. But we're going to allow all methods. And then let's create our first route by taking our router. We'll say for a GET request to the URL of API/version1/ and then the resource, which is products. And you don't have to have this here, but I don't know, I like to format my APIs like that. So this will take an arrow function as a second parameter. Now in here, it's going to take an object, which you might see like context or something like that, but I'm going to destructure because all I want is the response. Now since I'm using TypeScript, I'm going to say this is going to be a type of an object with a response that can be anything. And then in here, what we want to respond with, so we want to add to the body, let's just say hello world. Alright, so this should run, so I'm going to go down here and run deno run allow net server.ts. So server running on 5000, so let's check it out. We'll make a GET request to HTTP localhost 5000/API version1/products, and we get hello world, and we get a 200 OK response by default. Okay, so that's the fundamentals of how to just create a route, which is pretty simple and pretty similar to Express. Now, I don't want to have all my routes in this file here, so I'm going to create a file called routes.ts, and I'm going to just copy this top line here, and then we can get rid of application because all we need to bring in is the router. And then we can actually get rid of it from here. And then I'll copy this line or cut this line where we initialize our router, and also the route itself. Take that out, put that in here, and then we just want to make sure we export default router. Okay, and then we'll bring that in here. So let's say import router, no curly braces because it was exported by default, and that's going to be from ./routes.ts. Alright, so we'll save that, make sure this is saved, and let's restart this, and we should get the same response. So if we send this, we still get hello world. Good. Okay, so I also want to have a separate file for our functions. I don't want to just put everything right in here, so I'm going to create a new folder called controllers, and let's create a file here called products.ts. Now in terms of data, like I said, I'm not going to do anything to do with a database now. I might do that, or I will do that in a future video, but for now we're just going to put some hard-coded products in here. So we have 3 products with an ID, which is a string, a name, a description, and a price. Now, since we're using TypeScript, I'm going to create an interface called product and define the fields, which will be an ID, which is a string, a name, which is a string, description, and then we have the price, which is going to be a number. Okay, so that's the interface, and we can apply this to our array here by setting it to product, but it is an array, so we just want to add in our brackets here. Now this we can actually move to a separate file, so I'll cut that, and in the root, let's create a types.ts file and just export that interface. And any other interfaces you have in your application you would put in here. And then we can just simply import product from, and then we want to go up one level to types.ts. Alright, so that's our data. Now let's start to create our functions, and the first one is going to be to get all products. And I usually like to put like some metadata here, like the description. Let's do this. Description is going to be to get all products. Let's space that out a little bit. And then let's also do the route. So the route is going to be GET request, and it's going to be API version 1 and products. Okay, so now we'll create a not a variable, well, yes, a variable, but a function using an arrow function called GET products. All right, now this is a controller function which is going to be hooked to our route. So this is going to take in the same thing, response, and we want to set this to the type of an object with response any. And then we can take that response and say .body. And what we want to return here, what I like to do is return an object with a success value, and this is going to be a Boolean, in this case true, and then a data value with whatever the data we want to pass back, which is going to be all of our products. Now we need to export this. So down here, let's say export get products. And then in our routes, we'll import it. So we want to import get products from our controller. And then down here, we can just replace this whole arrow function with get products. So if we save this and restart this server, looks like we're getting it. Oh, I forgot the .ts. That's something I keep doing because it can be JS or TS. Okay, so that's running. Now we'll go ahead and hit that route again, and we get 200 response, we get success true, and in our data we have an array of all of our products, which is exactly what we want. Now I'm going to go ahead and just create all of our functions here and export them because I have a tendency to forget to do all that stuff. So let's copy this and let's paste this in, and then I'll just get rid of everything that's actually in here in the body. So this function is going to be to get a single product, so we'll call it just get product. And let's change this to, we'll say get single product. And yeah, so we'll just copy this. So we'll get a single product, and then we'll have one to, I'm sorry, this route here has to be product slash and then ID like that. And then this one is going to be to add a product, and it's going to be a post request to that same endpoint, and the function will be called add product. Okay, we'll paste this in again, and then this is going to be to update a product, which is going to be a put request, and it's going to be to product slash and then an ID param, and we'll call this update. So I'm just creating these first, and then the last one we'll do is going to be the delete. So this one will be delete product, which will be a delete request to product slash and then the ID, and we'll change this to delete. Okay, and then we just need to export these. So we have get product, we have add product, update, and delete. And let's go to routes and import all that stuff. Get product, add, and it should pop up here. So update and delete, and then we'll create our routes. So we could do router.get for the next one, which is going to be product slash ID, and that's going to call get product, which will get a single product. Now we don't have to keep doing router here, we can just tack on .get like that. So we have that, and then let's do our post requests. So post is going to be just to products, and that's going to call the add product function. Then we have our update, which is going to be a put request. So put and then update, and then delete. So delete by ID, that's right, and then delete product. All right, and if we want, we can just do a request body just so we can test out the routes. So for instance here, we'll just say get here, say add, just to make sure all the routes work and stuff. I just want to get this out of the way before we do the logic. And then this will be delete. All right, so let's restart this. And let's go here, and if we open up a new tab, let's copy this, and if we do /1, we should see get. Okay, we haven't created the logic to actually do it, but I at least want to test the routes. So the next one I want to test is, let's do update, because, or put I should say, because that needs an ID. Okay, update, good. Delete. Okay, that works. And then post doesn't have an ID, so we want to get rid of that. And add. So we at least know that the routes are working and the functions are being called. Now we can work on the actual logic. So let's start off with, we already have get all products. Let's do get single product. So for this, we're going to need to grab onto this ID that's passed in. So in addition to response, we want params. Okay, and then over here, we'll say params, not any. Params is actually going to be an ID. So it's going to be an ID, and it's going to be a string. And then down here, let's get rid of this and figure out how we want to do this. So if you were using a database, like if you were using Mongoose, for example, with Node, you would be using Mongoose methods like find and create and all that stuff. Now we're just dealing with static data, so we're just using pure JavaScript functions. For instance, we'll use the find high order array method here. So let's say const product, because we need to get a single product, and we'll set this to our products array, and then we'll use .find, which takes in an arrow function. So we'll say for each product, we want to get the product where the ID is equal to the params ID. And we're using Typescript, so we can add a type here of either product or undefined. Okay, so whatever this is has to be formatted as a product, which we created the interface for, or undefined if it's not found. Now down here, let's have an if statement. Let's say if the product is found, because I mean they might put an ID that's not there. If it's found, then we'll set the response status to 200, and we'll set the response.body to an object with success true, and the data is going to be the single product that was requested. Else, whoops, that's not the right place. Right here, else, then let's go ahead and set the response status. Let's set that to 404 because it's not found, and then we'll set the response. I'll just copy this actually. So we'll set this to false, success false, and then instead of data, I'm just going to put a message. So let's say MSG, and we'll say no product found. So let's save that, and we already have everything exported and all that stuff, so we can just restart this and let's test it out. So we want to make a get request to products / and then let's do 1, and there we go. We get success true, gives us our product. Now if we do 11, which we know there's no product with 11, we get false, 404, no product found. Okay, so that's working correctly. Now let's do the add product. Okay, so we want to be able to add to that array and return it. Now to get data that's sent from the client, we have to pass in here request. So we want request and response. So over here, let's say request, which is going to be any. Okay, and then in order to get the body, the data in the body from the client, let's create a variable here, and we get it from request.body. So this body method, which returns a promise. So we need to use await. Whoops, we want an equal sign here. Now, notice I have a squiggly line here, even with the Deno extension. That's because this is no longer in the global scope or the top level, so we do have to add a sync here like that. Now, I want to just make sure that there's data sent with the body, so we can say if not request, which has a method called hasBody. So if it has the body data, this will be true, but we're checking to see if it's false. If it's false, then let's go ahead and send a response status of 404, which means that they haven't formatted the data correctly or given us what we want to get a correct response. And then the response body is going to be success false, and then we'll have a message of no data. Okay, and then we'll have an else here. Else, then we want to add a new product. So I'm going to say const product, and we want to get that from the body.value, because this body right here, once we get it from here, is going to have a type and a value. So when we send our data, it'll be in JSON format, so the type will be JSON, and the value will have the actual data. So the value we're going to assign to this variable, which should be formatted as a product. Okay, and then we want to create an ID, because with most APIs, you don't create the ID from the client; it gets added by the database. However, we're not using a database, so what I'm going to do is bring in up here at the top. I'm going to use the UUID standard library. Okay, so there's an object called v4, because it uses version 4 of UUID, and we can bring that in from HTTPS and then deno.land/std/UUID and then mod ts. All right, and then we can use v4, which is an object that has a method called generate, to generate an ID. So let's go back down here. This will include the name, description, and price, and then we'll take that object and add an ID to it using v4.generate. Okay, so that'll create the ID. So once we have the product constructed, we'll go ahead and take the products array and we'll push onto it the new product. And if you were using a database, you wouldn't actually have to do this much work. You wouldn't have to manually create the ID and push it and stuff like that. You would just have like product save or something. So now for the response, let's do a status of 201, which means everything went okay and something got created. And then the body will be success true, and the data will be that product that was just created. So let's restart the server and let's try that. So now I'm going to make a post request to just products. Now if I don't send any data, I get false, no data with a 404. We don't want 404 actually, we want 400. 404 is not found. We want 400 here. And then yeah. So we'll restart that. Yeah, so we get 400 bad requests. Now to send data, we'll go to body, raw. I'm going to choose JSON. And let's send a name. Oops. Name. Can you guys see this? Let me. Oh, for some reason this isn't. I can't make it bigger. Well, I'm just putting an object, a JSON object with a name. We'll say product 4. Description. This is product 4 and price $19.99. All right, so we'll go ahead and send that, and we get back 201 created, success true, and we get back the product we created, and you can see the ID, the UUID was generated and put there as well. And then if we go back to this tab and send again, you can see that product 4 is added. All right, so we're now able to add a product. Now if I restart the server, it's going to disappear because it's only in memory. It's not saved in a database. So now let's do the update. So with the update, we're going to need params, we're going to need request and response. So over here, let's say params, which is going to be, it's going to have an ID, which is a string, and then after that we have request, which is any, and response, which is any. So for the update, it's going to be very similar to where we got a single product. So I'm actually going to copy the whole thing here. So getting the product by the ID, and then this if else, and we'll put that in the update here. So we're getting the product by the params ID, and then if that product exists, let's see, then we'll just get rid of this. So if that product exists, we want to get the new data from the body. So let's say const body await request dot body, and we have to mark this as async. And then the updated data is going to come from body dot value. So I'm going to actually just create a variable called update data and set that to body dot value. And as far as the type goes, this should be formatted as an object with an optional name, which is going to be a string, a description, which is going to be a string, and a, what else, price, which is going to be a number. All right, so the updated data, whatever is sent, will get put in this variable. And then there's a lot of different ways we can update. I'm going to use map. I like this way. It's very clean. So we're going to say products equals, and then take our products array and map through, and say for each product, we're going to, let's say, where the product ID is equal to the params.id, then we're going to use the spread operator here and take that specific product. So we're basically just mapping it to that specific product, and we're going to add the updated data. So we want to use the spread here and use update data. Okay, else, so this is a ternary, so we want to say else, then it'll just be the product. So it's going to map through every product, and if it matches the ID that's passed into the params, then it's going to add that updated data to that specific product. So hopefully that makes sense. And then, like I said, there's a lot of ways to do this. Now response, let's say response status is going to be 200. It means everything went okay. And then response dot body, say success true. And then as far as the data goes, we'll just return the entire thing, so the entire array with the updated data. And then we have this else here. So this is basically if it's not found, and we can just keep this as is, because up here we're just checking for the product. If it's not found, we'll send that back. So let's try it out. Save that, and let's reload. So now we want to update. So I want to put request, and let's update the first one. So we'll do /1, and then in the body here, let's change it to updated product, and we'll change the price to, let's say, $199.99, and send. So we get back all of the products and the ID of one. You can see the name has changed and the price has changed. The description is the same though. And if I go back to here and make a GET request to get all products, you'll see the updated product, which obviously won't stick if I reset the server, but if we had a database, we would have updated the database. Okay, so that works. Now we just want to do the delete, and we'll have a full CRUD REST API. So for the delete, let's see, we're going to need params, because we need to know which one we're dealing with. So here we'll say params, and for type, let's say ID, which is going to be a string. So the delete, this is going to be pretty easy. We can just use filter. So let's say products, our products array, we'll set to products.filter, and we'll say for each product, let's return where product ID is not equal to the params.id. So that should give us all the products except the one that we want to delete. And then we'll set the response body. Let's set that to success true. And let's see, I guess we'll just do a message. Yeah, we'll do a message. Product removed. So we'll save that. And let's restart our server. Okay, we'll go back here. So right now we have 3 products, right? So now I'm going to make a delete request to products/1 and send. We just get back product remove. I mean, we could send back the whole array if we wanted to. It doesn't, I mean, it's up to you how you want to structure your API. But now if I go here and send, you can see that product 1 is now deleted. All right, so now we have a fully functional CRUD REST API. Of course, everything is just in memory. We're not using a database or anything. But I will be creating a video where we implement a database into this API. But as you can see, I mean, if you're familiar with Node and Express, this isn't much different in terms of how you do things. I mean, we just have, you know, our main entry point. We have our routes connected to controller functions. The way that we bring in packages is obviously different, and there's no Node modules folder here with a million different packages in it. So, I mean, I like it. I like Deno. Again, though, it's very, very new, and Node.js is far, far from dead, so don't feed into that hype or that drama. But that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I will have the code for the API in the description. The stuff we did earlier I won't, just because it was just to kind of show you some of the fundamentals. But I hope you enjoyed this crash course and expect more videos on Deno in the future. Thanks for watching.